Welcome to the President's Diary, where we take a look at His Excellency Dr. President Irfaan Ali's week of activities. His Excellency had a busy week in New York, where he had extensive and fruitful engagements at the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. In a pre-recorded video presentation at the Sustainable Development Movement on Tuesday, His Excellency reaffirmed Guyana's commitment to advancing the UNGA's Sustainable Development Goals, noting that his government would strive through aggressive advocacy to ensure that Agenda 2030 remains the primary guiding framework. The President also noted that the country is committed to presenting its second voluntary national review in the decade of action to realize the SDGs by 2030. He used the opportunity to implore the international community to stay focused on achieving the agenda's targets and objectives. On Wednesday, President Ali pledged that his government will work to eradicate all forms of racism. He made this commitment at the high-level meeting to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action, hosted under the theme Reparations, Racial Justice and Equality for People of African Descent.
As we collectively strive to achieve the SDGs, we must be conscious that the overarching objectives of poverty eradication, protecting our planet, and building a peaceful world cannot be achieved without addressing all forms of inequality. Despite advances made over decades of struggle, racism and racial discrimination continue to be sources of conflicts and inequalities among people in all regions of the world. The government of Guyana will continue to work assiduously to eradicate all forms of racism and racial discrimination and to ensure inclusive development with equal access and sharing in Guyana's wealth.
The President further reaffirmed Guyana's commitment to the implementation of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action. Also on Wednesday, the head of state called for a renewed global effort in the fight against climate change to meet the goal of the Paris Agreement. The head of state told the Alliance of Small Island States Leaders Summit during the margins of the high-level segment of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly that Guyana supports the declaration that was adopted by the meeting.
My delegation supports the declaration being adopted at this meeting. This document established clear direction for the continuity in the work of the Alliance. Let us strengthen our advocacy on traditional as well as emerging areas of interest, including accelerating implementation of international frameworks and instruments targeted towards specific needs and vulnerabilities.
In a pre-recorded message, His Excellency welcomed the White House's global COVID-19 summit and expressed support for its draft targets.
While I endorse the optimism of this summit, I am mindful that global economic recovery will be uneven, and that unless the inequalities in the global economy are addressed and the problems of developing states are particularized in this process, the legacy of the pandemic will frustrate developing countries' recovery and the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm confident, however, that this summit is a step in the right direction, and I wish it every success.
During his maiden address to the 76th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations on Thursday, His Excellency Dr. President Irfaan Ali declared that people should not be restricted based on what vaccines they took.
Indeed, our efforts must be focused on full vaccination and addressing vaccine hesitancy. Millions took the vaccines which were available at a time of much uncertainty, and they are the unsung heroes. They must not now be the subject of restrictions based on the vaccines they took.
President Ali reminded that access to the vaccines saw the world polarized. Therefore, he said the world must not diminish efforts at ending the polarization of access to vaccines by implementing measures that divide and curtail movement based on the type of vaccines taken.
My government is pleased that the heads of the international organizations and CEOs of the major pharmaceutical companies have formed a technical working group to exchange and coordinate information on vaccine production and delivery. These are positive developments which are welcome, even though they have come after millions have died and many more millions still live under the threat of death.
Notably, more than 60% of Guyana's adult population has received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, with over 35% being fully inoculated against the deadly disease. Guyana recently began distributing vaccines for children, of which more than 29% have already received their first dose. The president also addressed the Venezuela border controversy and called for a peaceful two-state solution settlement between Israel and Palestine and for the normalization of relations between the USA and Cuba. According to the head of state, the world is too closely knitted to separate, and only a multilateral approach moving forward would suffice. Following extensive and fruitful engagements at the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly this week, President Ali said enormous interest has been shown in Guyana by international entities.
From all of the meetings, it is clear that Guyana is an area of high focus. Our country is playing on a different stage. Our country is getting a different level of attention. Our country is being focused on. And as leaders, we have to ensure that we give clear clarity as to where the country is going. Strong leadership is required.
During bilateral meetings, the head of state addressed the concerns about Guyana's democracy and the rule of law, which took a severe blow during the 5-month-long attempt by the APNU-AFCs to steal the March 2, 2020 general and regional elections.
It is clear that persons were following the 5 months, and of course it raises questions about them in terms of the sustainability of a country when you have democracy threatened the way it was threatened. So we had to repair a lot of damage also. We had to answer a lot of questions in relation to that. But we are very happy that we had the opportunity to do so, and we were able to present Guyana as a strong emerging market, not only for oil and gas, but for the various opportunities that are coming ahead.
During the week, the president also hosted a number of bilateral engagements and meetings to strengthen the country's international relations. On Monday, he met with a group of pastors from the Brooklyn community at the Permanent Mission of Guyana in New York, where he outlined his government's development policies concerning plans for One Guyana and his inclusivity approach to governance. He also engaged in bilateral talks with the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, His Excellency Dr. Yusuf bin Ahmad Al Uthami, and his delegation at the Permanent Mission of Guyana in New York. Following the opening of the general debate on Tuesday, His Excellency held a bilateral meeting with His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana. President Ali and a high-level delegation met with the Inter-American Development Bank President Mauricio Claver-Caron and his delegation, where President Ali updated the IDB head on Guyana's development plans and the importance of the IDB as a development partner. Bilateral discussions were also held with President of the Republic of Kosovo, Her Excellency Hossa Osmani Sadru. The meeting, which took place at the office of the Permanent Mission to Guyana in New York, was aimed at strengthening bilateral relations between the two nations. He met with the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro Leams, at the office of the Permanent Mission to Guyana in New York on Tuesday. To further bilateral cooperation between their nations, President Ali met with his counterpart, His Excellency Alexander van der Bellen, President of the Republic of Austria. The president also discussed matters in relation to climate change and COVID-19 vaccines with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the UN headquarters. The head of state held discussions with the Colombian president, His Excellency Ivan Duque Marquez, on the sideline of the UN General Meeting in New York. At the productive meeting, the presidents discussed matters relating to climate change and the environment, the strengthening of strategic cooperation in the area of defense and security, and COVID-19 vaccines. While participating in a forum on the economic recovery and restructuring in emerging economies and the integral role of energy and infrastructure development, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfaan Ali elaborated on the impacts of COVID-19 and his government plans for recovery. He also visited the site of the No Time to Lose installation, where he was briefed about the current global learning loss caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Bilateral discussions were also held with His Excellency Ibrahim Mohammed Solih, President of the Republic of Maldives. The head of state also met with His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, and head of the Saudi delegation to the United Nations General Assembly. Discussions were also held with the Prime Minister of Kuwait, His Excellency Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid Al Hamad Al Sabah. This has been the President's Diary, where we took a look at His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfaan Ali's week of activities. Thanks for watching. Join us again next week.